In light of all that's happened at Disney in recent days, there's been a flood of articles that are trying to direct Bob Iger's course of action, or help him course correct from the 11-month Chapek era. And yes, I know he may have had the CEO title a little bit longer than that, but his running tenure, for all intents and purposes, did not begin until Bob Iger's butt was out the door for the last time, or what many of us thought was going to be the last time. And from the time that Chapek wrote his letter to the company, which I believe was in early January, I think it was January 10th, it kind of ushered in that new era, the Chapek era. And from that point forward, he was already kind of embattled. He may not have known it, or maybe he was prepared for it, but the tone of that particular letter caused a great deal of consternation within the newly minted Reimagined Tomorrow folks and the DIE allies, which again is die. Who could possibly want opinions from our customers that would drive our content and serve as our North Star? The months that followed were, of course, a constant flood of childish, petulant outbursts that came from executives as well as cast members. It didn't seem to matter where it was coming from. Came from pretty much everywhere. They demanded, of course, more messaging and agenda and everything, and that was both the inward pressure and outward facing, which is bad. You don't want that to happen at all. And, of course, this led to colossal boneheaded mistakes by both the company employees and from within the C-suite itself. I mean, who can forget the education bill in Florida? I don't think anybody can. So the ruckus within certainly brought to the board's attention that the company needed some very stiff leadership for a change. So not that long ago, they re-empowered Bob Chapek, only to actually then a little bit later strip him of all of that and his job. But that's not what this video is about. It's not about the history of all the things that went from A to B. It's about a story and analysis of what Iger has in front of him, at least what some perceptions of what he has in front of him and what his primary concern would be. So let's get down to it. Here we go. So among the many articles that I read every single day, I came across one from Puck Media's Julia Alexander. Now, she's got several jobs, including working over at Parrot Analytics. It's in some capacity, and I don't want to get into any of that, but it has some different thoughts on why Chapek was let go. It gave me some pause, actually. I was like, wow, this is different. Could the questions around Chapek's quick exit come down to something that dumb? Here is the question that's supposedly plying Hollywood right now. How does Bob Iger fix streaming? It seems the streaming was the consideration for getting rid of Bob Chapek after the quarterly call. Seriously. The question that's being asked right now is, how does Bob Iger fix streaming? Sadly, I think that's the wrong question. Let's venture farther down this particular rabbit hole, because there is a lot here, and some of it's rather plausible. Because it seems like the opinions around streaming center on the recent spending. The spending on content and the losses that it created, along with obviously the expenses that come along with the streaming service. $1.5 billion is not insignificant. Those are the losses, to be exact. And that was just in one quarter alone. So it wasn't insubstantial, as I said before. As this particular article points out, and it's very fair, what they point out is that this spending was still following a playbook that was left behind by Iger himself. So it's not like there was a lot of shift in the wind. And some of the people that were involved in Disney Plus specifically have moved on right around the time that Chapek was, taking the reins. And to be clear, everything streaming started with Bob Iger, Uncle Bob. And both Disney and Apple were started at the same time, and Iger was involved in both. Well, that's another story. Maybe we'll do that one day. When you're looking at the subscription count specifically, which was allowed to be the false metric for measurement of success with the streaming services, the content spend didn't really matter. The investors weren't paying attention to it. The company wasn't paying attention to it. They probably should have been. But that particular attitude around that has actually shifted over the last 3 quarters, and the focus has been levied on ARPU, and therein lies the problem. In the recent quarterly numbers, as I mentioned, Disney reported over 161 million subscribers. Yay! That's awesome, right? Well, here's something that I didn't have confirmed until this article, and I've always wanted it to be confirmed, because I've talked about it before. I was right. Disney is triple counting bundled subscriptions. Holy fraud-tasticness, Batman. Wow. Additionally, the cost of bringing all the content home, which is what they've been doing recently, well, that's another problem, because it drives down overall revenue, because you're no longer licensing stuff out, and it's actually crushing the bottom line overall and forcing the decline in that revenue. The obvious problem with the streaming strategy overall is beyond the content spent. It's the actual subscriber marketplace. And that really totally sucks right now, for lack of a better word, a better adjective. Growth is slowing across the board for everybody, not just Disney, but everybody. I mean, Netflix and HBO Max and Paramount Plus and all of them, including Hulu, which Disney also owns. This makes it really difficult to make the churn numbers more manageable. And that's something that they absolutely have to do. It's not an easy feat since we're headed into probably a very terrible economy. I'm going to say it nicely that way. We all know it's much more serious than any of that. So when you have the expiring deals that are happening for some customers, that's likely going to drive up churn. That means that gaining more or new subscribers is as critical as keeping them. And the problem is, it's getting more and more expensive to get those subscribers in terms of overall revenue. It's very costly. It's not where you want to be. Doing it on the cheap with an outside partner, let's say Verizon or Xbox or whatnot, well, that deal drives down the ARPU. So something has to give somewhere, and it doesn't sound like any of them are, favorable. The ad tier offerings may have been looked at or two as a solution, but right now, as I've talked about here before, ad rates have been falling for all of the digital ad tech platforms and all of these streaming services. And in the coming years, I don't think that's going to help very much, not for some time. The Puck article that I'm referring to dives into the 3 streaming services that are basically all tied together, even though they're not, and they should be. And I think that boiling it down to fewer services would make them even more money, because there'd be fewer redundancies, because they're repeating a lot of stuff across the board that I think is expensive, and they shouldn't be doing it. There's a lot of no-win situation here for Uncle Bob. From Uncle Bob Iger here. He's going to have to do more than walk back what are perceived missteps by Chapek, which I don't think he was making a lot of them. And he's actually going to have to rethink his own plans, because ultimately, when it comes to streaming, his blueprint was still in place. Brand fatigue overall for Disney has been setting in for all of their offerings, and not just Marvel. We're talking everything, most specifically Star Wars, which a lot of people have been telling me they think is dead. the steady diet of the discount content that this particular streaming service is chock full of, with preaching agenda and all of that, well, it doesn't have a lot of resemblance to the source material that the customers are familiar with, and it's turning those customers off. And more than a few folks are going to be off the subscriber roster here, at least in the next few months, and there's going to be fewer folks that are going to be lining up to replace them. In fact, I imagine right now, if you're looking at subscriber count internally, you're freaking, because November is going to be a rough month, December is going to be a rough month, and you're going to look at January and be like, could this get worse? Probably can. Now, on the film side, on the film side, it would be easy to think that the constant stable of new theatrical offerings would add some value to your streaming service eventually, right? But just a few months down the road from their theatrical release. But to some extent, that's probably true. I think it's probably true. But I'm also going to argue that the quality of those films has deteriorated, and they don't present a viewer with rewatchability, right? So they're basically becoming the same kinds of shows that you're getting over on the Disney Plus channel anyway. In fact, I would say they're almost interchangeable at this point. And those shows, they suffer from the same lack of interest when it comes to repeat viewing. It's just bad content. It's faithless content, and turns off viewers, as I mentioned before, and that leads to churn. See, that's the enemy here. Iger needs to do the exact opposite thing that's been done to this platform since he started down this path. We get to the most obvious thing, finally, and that's setting a 2-year clock on all of this is just really, really dumb. Because you have a very, very long road back, and you're, as the article suggests, it's not just about replacing yourself with a proper successor, because apparently Chapek wasn't it. You're going to be contending with a very long road back to an economic recovery that's going to create a customer base that's going to support your streaming services, or even your brand at this point. Everything that has transpired as far as Disney Plus and the Disney company, even to this point, even with Chapek as the CEO, was put in place by Uncle Bob Iger before he even left, including a lot of the staffing. And, Chapek didn't work fast enough. It's been happening a lot to very thoughtful, plotting leaders. I won't refer to who else that is, but to me, this particular move, when it comes to this move backwards for Bob Iger, was a desperate move indeed, because he's just trying to preserve his legacy. And that's something that's been talked about in many, many, many different articles. So I'm just going to call it hubris at this point, because that's what it is. He's kind of doomed if he does and doomed if he doesn't, which is, I guess, how he ended up where he's at now. There's even less chance at the moment that he'll be able to pursue his political interests because of this move. Not that he would have had a chance at success there, because he's pretty much been exposed for what he is beyond being the weatherman. And unless he changes direction across the board with everything and offers a wide variety of broadly interesting content that engages the majority of the audiences out there across America specifically, because let's face it, they pretty much drive the ARPU upwards, the company trend overall will continue and move downward. But hey, I could be wrong. What do you think? Do you think that streaming was the call to action that moved the board to fire Chapek? Do you think that Uncle Bob Iger was the right guy to bring in, considering he'd already laid all this out to begin with, beginning to end, including everything that happened to this point, even under Chapek? And is there any other areas as critical to Disney as streaming right now? Well, I would say the theme parks and attendance there is probably good. That's the cash cow, but hey, what do I know? I think these are good questions all, and I'd like to talk about them. This one is going to generate some conversation, so please utilize the comment section down below and let's interact. because I think you guys all interact beautifully with each other, and when I get a chance, I like to mix it up too. Also helps with engagement for the channel, which is why I'm here always encouraging you to support independent content creators. They are working very hard for you to drudge up these types of things to talk about and bring to your attention, and hopefully do it in a nice, easily digestible way. So if you wouldn't mind, hit the subscribe button. Be sure to turn on your notifications, like videos that you enjoy, comment on the ones that you feel like you need to comment on or you want to comment on, or just to say hi. And of course, share the content of your favorite creators, because it helps bring people to their channel and helps them grow. And at the same time, that allows them to create more content and keep going. It's really important that we do that, because the mainstream doesn't do this stuff. We do. And with that, on this Thanksgiving Day, I will say be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, wash your hands, of course, because it's good hygiene. And again, nobody wants you touching their food. If you haven't washed your hands, you're not going to pass a bread roll to your relative that you with your hand that you've gross. Man, anyway, every time I think about that today, it's probably going to be my same ending for these videos. But anyway, and be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, wash your hands, and until next time, bye. Five stories a day, good gravy. And don't forget to check out my Rumble at rumble.com/CultureCasino.
Thanks for visiting today. Be sure you're subscribed and hit that for alerts.
Yay!
Of course, like and share all of the videos that you can, as it helps with the algorithm. Have a great day.